Hello, everybody. Welcome to the podcast today. So last week we hit a milestone with the podcast. We hit 50 episodes, which is hard to believe. We've been at this almost a year now. We started, I believe, May 1st of 2022 was our very first episode. So if you've kind of followed along the journey, thanks for being here. Or if you're a first-time listener, I'm glad you found us, and hopefully the content is engaging and can help you, especially if you are a parent who has a student that is doing online learning, because it's kind of its own space. So today we wanted to kind of dive into that exact topic where we're sharing some tips for how students can be successful in online learning, because really it is, kind of the wave of the future. A lot of us got exposed to it for COVID, and there was a lot of scrambling and trying to figure out how to make this work. And even now, as online education is evolving, there's new technologies that are coming out, different ideas, all the things. And so keeping up with it, trying to help your students be successful. How do you do it all? So let's go ahead and dive into some of the tips that we have shared with our parents who are asking us these same questions of, how can I keep my kid motivated while they're doing online learning? And how do I help them be successful? Especially if parents are working, right? You can't be there to monitor your child all day. So how do you keep them motivated, and how do you keep them being successful? So let's dive into some of our favorite tips and tricks for students.
Yes. So one of the first things that always comes to mind for me, and something that I recommend to all of my students, is develop a routine, come up with rhythms, some type of structure. So some online schools might have minimum attendance requirements or things like that. Others may not. So either way, you're usually afforded a lot more flexibility and openness with your schedule than you would in a typical brick and mortar school, which can be a really scary thing if you don't work hard to create your own structure, or at least some kind of rhythm, right? So that's one of the biggest tips that I give to students that I work with. I don't know if you've seen that play out at all. I know for me personally, I like my own rhythms, right? When I wake up,
Yeah.
typical that I, maybe take a look at some news, have a coffee. Like, you get used to certain rhythms that create that routine in your life, and just gives you a little bit more structure than just kind of flying by the seat of your pants, right? So
Yeah.
same
Well,
goes for school.
yeah, and it provides that kind of sense of, oh, okay, now I go and do school, right? It's that routine. They just know that that's part of their day, part of their routine, something that they can count on. And I think something that kind of goes hand in hand with having a routine is also establishing accountability, right? Especially for those parents that are maybe working and can't monitor their teenager all the time. How are you holding your child accountable? How are you checking in on accountability? And, with a teenager, sometimes it's hard to check in. They don't necessarily want to be accountable to their parents. So maybe have them find a buddy that is also doing online school, or maybe is at public school, one of their best friends, have them check in and kind of have an accountability buddy with one of their friends, especially if they're hesitant or not likely to kind of check in with you, or they do the eye roll, the head shrug, the, oh my gosh, why are you checking in on me? The attitude a little bit. Kind of make it fun for them, so that they realize, oh, hey, I'm not the only one going through this. I can check in with my friend and be like, well, hey, what did you learn? Or, oh my gosh, I thought this was so stupid. They commiserate, they can kind of hold each other's hands and hold each other accountable. And also, along with this, I think this is another tip that we're going to address a little bit later, but like hand in hand with that, like incentivize their learning. So if they have an accountability person, if it's you, if it's a friend, kind of incentivize the learning as well, and say, hey, if you do this, and this, you check in with your friend once a week, you do at least 30 minutes of this class every day, then here's your reward at the end of it, right? And figure out kind of what motivates your kids. Some it might be screen time. Some it might be, I want to go shopping with my friends, or, whatever it is. Find out what kind of motivates your kid and use that as an incentivization kind of program for them as well.
Yep. Important to set healthy boundaries for sure. You have to have an expectation set up. Without boundaries, our kids just will keep pushing the limits until they find the limit.
Yeah.
And it's actually scarier for a teen, despite, like you said, the reactions that they might give us to setting the boundary, the eye roll or the whatever it might be. It's scary for a young person to continually push against you or whatever it is to find the boundary and not be able to find it.
Yeah, it's
Because
chaos.
that's a big level of power that they're experiencing. Like, nobody can even control me. How am I supposed to control myself if I'm pushing and I can't find the boundary because there
Yeah.
isn't one set? That's hard to understand as a teen, and it's just a little bit scary. So it is, as much as your teens, will look at you and just, maybe talk back or state how much they can't stand doing school or whatever boundary it is that you have set, they need that boundary.
Yeah. And one day when they're an adult looking back, they'll thank you for that. They'll be like, oh, hey, thanks for setting rules. Thanks for having boundaries, because I realized it helped me with XYZ, especially once they're in the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's better they learn in a structured environment in your home rather than going to their first job, not knowing boundaries, not knowing anything, and then they get fired, right? And then it develops this pattern of, oh, I fail at everything. And so, yeah, I think having that structure, boundaries, routine is super crucial for those exact reasons, Sarah.
Right. Yeah, I agree. That's something that parents struggle with. If you're listening and you're feeling that way, you're not alone. It's a hard thing for parents to do, to find the healthy boundaries. Certain kids respond differently to different kinds of boundaries. So it might be more of the taking like more of the incentivization approach, trying to make it positive versus punitive or like a negative thing. And you just have to play around with it and find out what works for your family.
Mm-hmm.
But set something, right? Set an expectation, set a boundary. It might look differently for everybody, but I just feel like parents get caught up in this feeling like we have to be liked by our kids, right?
Yeah.
We have to be the cool mom or the cool parent. And I don't know, it's hard because we want our kids to like us. We want to feel like they can confide in us and, be our friend. But when they're this age, right, when they're school age, the job is to be the parent. And if you set those boundaries now, you will have a best friend for life when your child is an adult. If
you do the work now.
If you let them run the household now, you're losing respect, and they probably won't want to be your friend when they're an adult. So as hard as it is now, it's better to create that respect and the expectation that's out there. So but it's tough. I feel for parents, right, that have teenagers struggling with these types of things.
For sure. It's what you said, do the hard work now for the payoff later. And when you're in it, it's hard to keep that kind of long-term goal in mind, because you're thinking, how do I just deal with my teenager today? How do I just get through this moment, right? But even if you just have a conversation, with your child and say, look, these are the expectations in our house. What do you think is a fair consequence for violating it? And let them feel a part of it so that they don't feel that they're just being dictated at, or, oh my gosh, you're so rude. How are you? Blah, 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 blah. And then that also gives them an opportunity to explore their critical thinking, their reasoning, because they're a part of the conversation. It's not just because I said so, right? It's let's have a conversation. Let's see how you're feeling about it, what you think, like your opinion matters. Let's hear what you have to say, right? Not necessarily giving them all the power of saying, like perfect example is like, with my 7-year-old stepson, it's, well, what do you think is a fair rule? And he, and he gives some silly thing, and it's like, well, that's not really a consequence, and so then we have the conversation of, well, no, if you decide to lie, there's got to be a consequence. And what motivates you? You love treats. So if you lie, that means you don't get treats the rest of the day, right? So, and then we asked, do you think that's fair? Because that's something you like, and you're not supposed to lie. And he goes, yeah, that's fair. And so then when he inevitably fibs about something and we have to say, okay, we caught you in your lie. Remember what the consequence was. He'll say, well, that's not fair. And we'll be like, remember when you helped us pick this rule and we decided on this? And he goes, yeah, I guess, so
Right.
that's what I mean by that. Let them be a part of it, because then they'll remember, oh yeah, I had this conversation. I did understand that that's the
Mhm.
consequence.
Right. Yeah, agreed. And experimenting is a great way,
Yeah.
try different methods and you'll eventually find something that works. If you're struggling, like we have so many great contacts, parent coaches and people that we can connect you with that are amazing and, have been in your shoes, they're parents of struggling students or were parents of struggling students and have successfully parented them through adulthood. So if you do need to talk to somebody, we have people that we can connect you with that are just amazing and
Yeah.
have been exactly where you are with teen students. So, but yeah, just experimenting and trying to change things up is huge. So one student that I just talked with today, we were talking about the rhythms and what works, just some students typically wake up and want to start school right away. Other students are like, hey, I work better in the afternoon, and there's different ways that you can structure your day. So I agree with you, Angeli, is just working with your student to get some of that buy-in and involve them in the decision making. So talk with your student. Hey, when do you feel like you learn best? How
Yeah.
can we structure the school day around that? You want to do afternoon learning? How can we make that happen? How can we create that rhythm to where you're logging in the afternoon to do maybe your hardest subjects, right? It's when you're operating at full go, right?
Yeah.
So, but definitely involving the student in that decision is going to be huge, and giving a little bit of ownership over some of those things to where you're getting that buy-in from your student. Setting goals with your student. Okay, you want to graduate instead of getting your GED? Great, this is what needs to be done. How are we going to do that? Let's break that into, smaller goals, weekly goals, daily goals to achieve that. And if they're the ones setting those big goals, there's going to be so much more buy-in, and you can help then to keep them accountable because it's something that they know they want to achieve.
Yeah, for sure. And I think along with, breaking up the day, figuring out what works best for your student, then it also ties back into the incentivization and the setting boundaries, right? Oh, okay, great. You want to have a, lazy morning, if you will, and then maybe do your schoolwork in the afternoon. That's great. But before you can go outside and ride your bike, or before you can go play with your friends, or before you can play your video games, you have to get your schoolwork done, right? Because you're setting, again, that expectation up front, that boundary. They're aware of it. They know what it is. And again, go back to the experimentation if that doesn't work. Oh, okay, well, I see this consistent pattern where maybe you're not sticking to that goal that you're accountable to. How can we switch it up? And have those conversations. I think that's part of being the accountability buddy with your kid. But also, that gives them a chance to kind of let them see their progress too. You can kind of do that own weekly check-in as a parent and say, hey, look, this is where you started at the beginning of the week. This is where you're at now. Like, that's awesome. Way to go. Or, hey, maybe it looks like you didn't do as much in your English class this week. How can we fix that this next week? And what are you struggling with, right? It's all about communication, I think. And that's kind of in this day and age, a lost art in a lot of situations. But, really it dials back to that communication and just being honest, and saying, hey, this is part of what we've got to do with your online learning is check in, let's see your progress. And like you mentioned, oh, if you have a goal to graduate high school, okay, well, let's check in on that goal weekly and see how you're making those strides. Because if you have this goal, but you're not doing the stuff, how's it going to happen? And if you just have those conversations with them and help them see, then it might, incentivize that buy-in as well for them to be like, oh, shoot, I do want to go to college and I have these plans, but I got to start here first. And then they'll be willing to kind of put in the hard work because they see what the end result is.
Yeah, 100%. Have you ever heard of the term body doubling?
I don't know. It sounds familiar. I'm sure I have, but
so it's basically you have somebody sitting next to you, a person, right? A body. And that's all they're doing. is they're just being there, being present with you, like while you do your work. And there's something about having somebody there with you
Yeah.
that, for whatever reason, yeah, I'm not sure on all the science behind it, but it makes you more productive in the work that you're trying to accomplish. So they could know nothing about what you're doing, but just having them be there. So it's something that we do, like Mountain Point Academy. We're all virtual, so we have people all over the place, teachers in Chicago, Louisiana, I think Montana, Utah. I don't know. We're all over Milwaukee, right? So we don't always get to be together in person,
Yeah.
but we set up this thing called our co-working space. And it's like a virtual Google Meet where we can just pop in there and just work alongside people if we want to, right? Or if we're
Mhm.
feeling like, oh gosh, I'm not feeling productive, I need to have somebody on a call with me, even though we're not really talking or saying anything to each other or collaborating. Just the idea of having somebody there, knowing that you're supposed to be working and I'm supposed to be working, there's something that just happens and it works, and it's so bizarre.
Yeah.
But it could be something that you consider if you can't maybe afford a tutor for your student. Maybe you can have somebody just be present that doesn't need to know anything about school, just somebody that's there while your student is supposed to be working. So
Yeah.
anyways, that's a thought, a cool
There you
thought
go.
that I've seen.
Yeah, body double in my mind went to like, movies and oh, that's my stunt double, my body double, right?
I think that's the term that I heard.
Yeah.
Um,
But I mean, it makes sense, right? As humans, we're all we're wired for connection.
yeah.
And so even just feeding
Body
off the energy of somebody there being present, knowing, oh, hey, they're watching what I'm doing. They can see what I'm doing. They're going to know if I've done work, right? It's kind of like an external motivator a little bit, but at the same time, it kind of kickstarts that motivation a little bit. So I
Mhm.
think that is a good idea. Or,
Yeah.
if your teenager is the type that can work well if their friends come over and they're doing school too, do like a little study group. They can all be on their laptops doing their online schooling together, obviously with boundaries, as long as they don't get, oh, hey, have you seen this new YouTube video, or fall down the rabbit hole of TikTok, right? So again, gauge it, experiment it with your child, because every student's different. Everybody learns differently. And some are super motivated with online learning and can just be like, boom, I got this. I know what I got to do. Others, might take a little more hand holding support, that type of stuff. So, your child best. So experiment, figure it out and see what works for them. But I think there's a lot of opportunity with online learning as well. And something cool too, a lot of the questions we get from students are like, when am I ever going to use this again in real life, right? Why do I have to learn this? This is stupid. So come up with a related activity outside of the school space where you can kind of teach your kid and help them see that connection. So maybe if they're doing math and wondering, why do I have to learn math, right? Put them in a situation where maybe they talk to an architect or, somebody in your network of friends. Hey, when do you use math in your job? Help them find that real world connection. Or, if they're learning about science and you're on a walk, like point out the different microorganisms or ecosystems that are around you, right? Do something related so they can see the connection. And I think that also creates buy-in for students, because then they realize, oh, hey, I just learned about this, or that's why I'm learning about this. That's a way to help as well.
Yeah, and our mentors can help with that too. So our students, if you're a Mountain Point Academy student, you'll have a mentor that you'll connect with on a regular basis, whether it's monthly, every other week, or weekly, or more often than that, possibly, depending on your level of support that you've chosen. But that person can help you as a parent, or if you're a student listening as well. But if you're trying to come up with some ways to apply the learning, the mentors are great at that type of thing. So if you're looking to plan a trip to a museum or find those like experiential learning opportunities, definitely ask your mentor. They will help you. If they don't have some ideas right off the top of their head, they'll find a bunch and send them your way. So they're great about that kind of thing.
Yeah,
Super
for sure.
helpful.
Yeah. Awesome. But yeah, thanks for listening. Hopefully these tips were helpful for you with having your student be successful with online learning. And if you're listening, please drop a comment and let us know which of these tips have you tried out as a parent, or have you seen that works for your student, or if you have a totally different tip that you've found to be effective, please share. We always want those resources out there for parents and community because we're all in this together. And so we just want to provide that information, those resources for parents so that they can help their student find success as well.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you next time.